What do you know about Jamil, who was the most feared woman in Islamic history? I'm going to tell you everything about her in this video, so make sure to watch until the end. Who is Jamil? To answer this question, we must first go back to the days of Jahiliyyah. This is the time before Islam. At that time, there lived a woman named Arwa bint Harb ibn Umayyah. However, she was known as Umm Jamil because her son was called Jamil. She was born in Mecca and belonged to the famous tribe of Quraysh. And not only that, but her father, Harb ibn Umayyah, was from the most prestigious and powerful clan of Quraysh, which made her an extremely proud woman. In addition, she was married to Abu Lahab, one of the richest and most powerful men in Mecca, which increased her status and pride even more. Jamil enjoyed a high social status in Mecca, which enabled her to easily influence people and make them do what she wanted. Also, she was extremely beautiful, and all the men of Mecca wanted to marry her. But she chose Abu Lahab because he was the richest man in Mecca. So what was her role in opposing Islam? As you know, when our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, started calling people towards Islam, leaving shirk, worshipping idols and other false gods, people were divided. Some accepted Islam while others opposed it. One of the first and most vehement opponents of Islam was none other than Jamil herself. When the Prophet Muhammad proclaimed his prophethood, Jamil saw it as a direct threat to her family's power, social status, and the established order of life in Mecca. So she strongly opposed Islam and dedicated her life to destroying the Prophet's mission. How did she do that? We're going to answer this question in the next part, so make sure you don't skip. First, Jamil used slander and propaganda. This is a method commonly used by arrogant people who want to cover up their own mistakes and wrongdoings. For example, she spread rumors and lies about the Prophet Muhammad, calling him a magician and a liar. She claimed that he was reciting sorcery and incantations, and that he had been possessed by a jinn. All of these statements were false and baseless, but they were very effective in damaging the Prophet's reputation and turning people against him. She also used her influence among the women of Mecca to spread propaganda and incite them to hate the Prophet's wives. She particularly targeted Khadijah, the Prophet's first wife, and spread rumors that she was bewitching the people of Mecca. She also said that the Prophet Muhammad was marrying too many women and that he was encouraging people to abandon their religion and follow him instead. All of these statements were lies, but they were very effective in creating division and discord among the Muslims. Second, she caused physical harm to the Prophet, peace be upon him. There is a narration where the Prophet Muhammad was walking with his companion, Abu Bakr, in the market of Mecca. Suddenly, Jamil came out of a house and threw thorns in the way of the Prophet, so that he would hurt himself. When Abu Bakr saw this, he removed the thorns from the Prophet's path. Then Jamil came out again and threw stones at the Prophet. Again Abu Bakr defended the Prophet and protected him from harm. Another narration says that during the Hajj, when the Prophet was praying at a place called Marwa, Jamil and other mushriks climbed up onto the roof of a nearby building and threw filth, including stones, soil, and other debris onto the Prophet and his companions. Third, she put pressure on the leaders of Mecca to harass the Muslims. Jamil knew that the leaders of Mecca were afraid of losing their power and influence. So she convinced them that Islam was a threat to their authority and that they needed to take action to stop it. She told them that the Prophet was calling them and their people polytheists and that he was saying that their gods were false. She also said that Islam was causing division and discord among the people of Mecca and that it was weakening the tribe of Quraysh. All of these statements were lies, but they were very effective in convincing the leaders of Mecca to persecute the Muslims. And indeed, the leaders of Mecca listened to her and increased the persecution of the Muslims. They beat them in the streets, they boycotted them economically, and they even imprisoned them without charging them with any crime. Jamil was one of the main instigators of the 3-year-long social and economic boycott of the Muslims by the people of Mecca. During the boycott, the Muslims were confined to the Valley of Mecca and were not allowed to leave or trade. Jamil and her husband Abu Lahab led the campaign to enforce the boycott, and they were very successful. The Muslims suffered greatly during the boycott, but they never gave up on their faith. Fourth, Allah revealed a whole chapter in the Quran against her, Surah al-Masad. Chapter 111. This surah is a powerful condemnation of Umm Jamil and her husband, Abu Lahab. It prophesies their ruin and punishment in hell. The surah says, "Perish the hands of Abu Lahab, and perish he who gives him drink. So will he not cease to be an object of scorn and abuse? And she who gives him drink and earns thereby a double scorn, for he himself is a liar, a sinner, and a rebel." The surah also refers to Jamil as the carrier of firewood, which some scholars believe means that she is the one who gathers the fuel for the fire of hell. After this surah was revealed, Jamil became furious and vowed revenge on the Prophet. She confronted the Prophet directly one day and threw a stone at him, intending to kill him. However, miraculously, she could not hit the Prophet because he was sitting right in front of her next to Abu Bakr. She could only see Abu Bakr. So this is considered as divine intervention and protection for the Prophet. Before we move on to the next part, please take a moment to like and share this video with your friends and family. Now let's continue. The ignominious end of the most evil woman in Islamic history. Jamil's story has a very sad ending. First, her husband, Abu Lahab, died a terrible and slow death. He suffered from a terrible disease that made him feel excruciating pain and decay. It took him several days to die, so he was writhing in pain the whole time. Jamil was very upset by her husband's death, because not only had he been her husband, but he was also her source of wealth and power. Without him, she was nothing. So she tried to find someone else to marry, but no one would accept her, because she was now a widow of Abu Lahab, the man who had died a horrible and slow death. Eventually, she died alone and humiliated. The exact circumstances of her death are not known, but there are two narrations. The first one says that she was crushed to death by a stone while she was outside her house. The second narration says that she was strangled to death by a rope while she was inside her house. Both narrations are supported by evidence from the Quran and the Hadith, and both of them describe her death as terrible and ignominious. One thing is for sure, though, she did not die a martyr's death. Rather, she died as a result of her own actions and the consequences of her own arrogance and hatred. What lessons can we learn from the story of Jamil? The story of Jamil is a cautionary tale about the consequences of arrogance, hatred, and opposition to divine truth. It teaches us that no matter how powerful, wealthy, or influential a person is, they are nothing in the face of divine justice. It also teaches us that wealth and status are meaningless if one wastes them fighting against faith. And finally, it reminds us that Allah Almighty is just and merciful, and that those who oppose Him and His messenger will ultimately face His wrath. Now it's time to ask you a question. What did you think about the story of Jamil? What surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and share it with your family and friends. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to get notified when we upload new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.